Welcome to the official podcast at contentchampion.com. Join our heroic quest to discover truly epic content marketing. Introducing your host, the content champion himself, Loz James.
Hi folks, welcome to session 20 of the Content Champion podcast. On the show this time, I'm delighted to be speaking with blogging expert Jon Morrow. Founder of guestblogging.com, CEO of Boost Blog Traffic, and former associate editor of Copyblogger, Jon teaches his readers and students exactly how to build a popular blog. Jon is one of the most high-profile bloggers on the internet, and he is widely admired by other industry experts. What Jon doesn't know about building a successful blog is quite frankly not worth knowing, so it's fantastic we've got him on the show. Let's dive in. Thanks very much for coming on today, Jon.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, today's show is all about attracting traffic to your blog, and having you on as a guest is so great because you've long been an expert in this area. But before we kick off, I'd love to hear your backstory about how you got started online, please.
Yeah, it was really sort of an accident. I used to be a real estate finance executive and raised a lot of money for big real estate deals in the U.S., and when the real estate market started crashing here, I figured out that I was going to have to find a different job and start a different career. So I knew a lot about finance, and I started a blog about personal finance. Within 60 days or so, I had gotten something like 70-something thousand unique visitors.
Wow.
To the blog. It was really popular. It was nominated for the best business money blog in the world. And from there, at the same time, I got an offer to buy the blog and an offer from Brian Clark over at copyblogger.com, which is one of the biggest blogs in the world, to become an associate editor there. So I sold the blog, took it up on the offer. I've been doing it full-time ever since.
Your story is so inspiring, Jon. I mean, I first found you through guestblogging.com and then through your great work on boostblogtraffic.com. How did these two come about?
Yeah, well, after about, I guess it was 3 or 4 years of being spoiled over at Copyblogger, I finally started to wonder, when I stopped working there full time, it was up to about 3.5 million page views a month.
Wow.
Really popular blog. And I was doing really well. And I'd kind of built a name for myself for being able to publish content that got a lot of traffic. But I started to wonder if it were me alone, could I do this for myself? Could I build this type of blog? And they always treated me really well. I have absolutely no complaints about anybody at Copyblogger, but I also started wondering, I'm not an owner in Copyblogger. I never have been. I was just sort of one of their key people. And I started to think, if you're as good as you think you are, you need to do this for yourself. So I did. I started Boost Blog Traffic. And I started the guest blogging class. I actually started the guest blogging class first. When I started the guest blogging class, I got something like it was either $25,000 or $35,000 in sales the first week.
Wow.
That I put it up for sale. And so that showed me that I was onto something. For Boost Blog Traffic, when I launched that, and that was when I eventually sort of left Copyblogger, is when I officially launched that. I got 13,000 subscribers to the pre-launch in just the first 60 days.
Had you taken some of those followers from Copyblogger? Were people already really fascinated by what you were doing and followed you over to those new platforms?
About 2,000 of those were from Copyblogger. They were nice enough to write up a little announcement that I was starting the blog. So that was very nice of them and very supportive. So yeah, about 2,000 of those subscribers were from Copyblogger. The rest were from various guest posts that I did. I also created a video trailer, like a movie trailer, for the blog, which was kind of the first time anybody had ever done that for a blog launch. So that got covered on a few of the big social media sites. That got me a few thousand subscribers. I also started doing webinars for different audiences about things like blog traffic and headlines for different big companies like Aweber, where they would send out an email to all of their customers, and I would do a free training. I didn't sell anything, but I would train for an hour on a topic I was an expert in. And in exchange, they allowed me to follow up with all of those people that attended the webinar. So every time I did that, and I continue to do that, by the way, if I got 1,000 people to register for it, about 80% of them may stay and become subscribers. So, that's 800 new email subscribers just for doing a 1-hour talk. So, yeah, I did a lot of that too.
These are such incredible stats. I know that people listening will be in awe of your blogging skills and your ability to attract such a large amount of visitors to your sites. And this is what I really want to drill down into today. You're obviously an expert on blogging, guest blogging and growing blog traffic. Where does this whole process start, Jon? Is it understanding your target audience first?
It is. It's understanding your target audience and what outcomes they want to achieve. So the reason why Boost Blog Traffic is called Boost Blog Traffic is because you ask any blogger what they want, and they say, I want more traffic. So I named the outcome that they wanted to achieve, even directly in the domain name of the site. So not only do you have to know your audience and know who they are, but you also have to know what they want to happen. And it needs to be a tangible outcome. A lot of blogs that start, they really just start blogging about a subject without any clearer understanding of how they want to change their readers' life. So for me, it's very easy. After people read my blog, I want them to have more blog traffic. Being so clear about that, I think, has helped. It's also helped guide all of the content we publish, the products we create. And, another big piece of it, though, is there are certain audiences that are a better fit for blogging than others. Blogging is very much a mass market medium. It works well with topics where there are millions of people interested in whatever you're talking about. If you're trying to target a small audience, it doesn't work so well there either. So that's another thing that gets a lot of people confused, is that they've always heard the idea that you need to choose a niche and choose a small pond that you can dominate. And in a lot of types of marketing, that's totally true. But in blogging, it's the opposite. If I had to say, where do you start? I would say, first of all, you need an audience that's a viable fit for blogging. And then from there, you need to understand what it is they want to achieve.
Okay, so, the process for perhaps listeners who aren't in very, very popular niches, you can't run a successful blog about just anything. If you're selling door handles and things like that, it's going to be very difficult for you, perhaps.
It's true. I mean, the example that Sonia Simone at Copy Blogger always gave, which I always loved, is you can start a blog about naked mole rats, but if there are only 2 people in the world who like reading about naked mole rats, you're never going to have more than 2 readers. So in general, the blogs that are popular, they fall into just a few categories. Social media is definitely one of them. That's the one that I fall into. Self-improvement is probably the biggest one. And it's no coincidence why. Self-improvement advice applies to almost every human being on the planet. Personal finance, news, careers, parenting is another big category. So there are a lot of those big categories. If you're not in one of those big categories or connected to one of those big categories, it's actually very difficult to have a popular blog.
Can you use blogging then as a business building tool to get enough visitors to perhaps drive sales if you are in a more difficult industry? Or would you advise to just, put your eggs in different baskets?
It depends on 2 things, okay? And here's where it starts to get technical. It depends on, number 1, what your business is about, what you sell, who you sell to. It also depends on the blogging model that you use. So I had a client that hired me for a consultation not long ago. She sold software and coaching to help people who had learned English as a second language to reduce their accent.
Wow.
So that they didn't feel quite so self-conscious. Which she'd identified the market. She clearly understood what one of their problems was. She had a successful business doing this, but she wasn't getting any results from blogging. I said, well, blogging, in that case, that's way, 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 way too niche. Okay? There's not a single blog in the world that targets that audience, that's popular, okay? So the question with traffic is always, where is it going to come from? Because it doesn't come from nowhere. And when you're blogging, it's okay, who is going to link to me? If you can't answer that question, then usually blogging is not a good fit. So because there wasn't a blog targeting that audience, then there wasn't really anyone to link to her, meaning there was no way for her to get traffic. Now, what did work is a slightly different model. Blogging doesn't always have to be used as a traffic generation tool. It can also be used as a relationship building tool with the client. So what I recommended in that case was to do advertising, like on Facebook or LinkedIn, where she could get very targeted, because on those platforms they have language settings, country you're from settings, all of those things, where you can be very targeted about who you're advertising to. And then from there, get them on an email list and use the blog almost like a newsletter to build a relationship with them after they had subscribed. So in that case, the blog became a way to build trust and authority, but it was not useful as a traffic generation tool.
That's a great strategy. So every time a new post was published on the blog, automatically send out a new email to that growing list, and that cycle is sort of completed, growing that trust and authority.
Exactly.
So let's suppose we are in an industry where traditional style getting loads of traffic blogging does work. What types of posts, in your experience, create the most engagement?
The posts that create the most engagement are often story-based. Now, here's the thing. A lot of times, the posts that create the most engagement get the least amount of traffic. That's one of the things that I've noticed. At Boost Blog Traffic, we run posts with different objectives. Some posts, we call them bonding posts, or the purpose of those posts is to create an emotional bond with the audience. Okay? Mm-hmm. Some posts, the purpose of the post is to get a lot of shares. On Twitter, we call, or on Facebook or any of the platforms, we call those social posts. Some posts we publish with the goal of ranking for a particular keyword in the search engine. So those are SEO type posts. But for engagement, to bond with your audience, the best posts are emotional. They have some emotional element to them. And stories are a great way of creating emotion. It doesn't have to be, but in general, the posts that get your audience to feel that bond and to start opening your emails and reading everything you write, they're the posts that make them feel something when they finish reading. And the way that you can tell whether you're successful or not is with the number of comments. So if your goal is to engage with the audience, if your bonding type post is successful, you should be getting double, triple, quadruple the number of comments that you would on other posts, even if you're not getting as much traffic to that post.
Because I know the story of your own life is very inspirational and has created engagement in exactly that way.
Yeah, so there are two posts for me that have done a lot of bonding. One is the first one that I published was on Copyblogger. It was called On Dying Mothers and Fighting for Your Ideas. And that post went viral. It was the first time I had publicly talked about my disability. For anyone listening that you don't know my story, I have a form of muscular dystrophy called spinal muscular atrophy. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't move from the neck down. And that was the first time I really talked about that. And I talked about my childhood and doctors telling my mother I was going to die before the age of 2, and about how my mother fought to keep me alive. And watching her fight taught me how to fight for myself and my own ideas. And it was a definite tearjerker type post. But it went viral. I don't know exactly how many people have read it, but it's probably getting close to about 1 million people have read it by now. So that post, very emotional post. I had people leave comments in that post that I've been crying for the past 2 hours since I read that. I've sent it to my entire family. Whenever you do a bonding type post, it doesn't have to be causing people to cry, but the emotion that you give the reader should be a lot of emotion. It should be a physical reaction. And then the second post that I wrote was kind of quit your job, move to paradise, and get paid to change the world. And that was on ProBlogger. That's now the most popular post in the history of ProBlogger. It crossed 1 million page views a good while back, I think. But that post is about a little bit more of my story. After I started working for Copyblogger, I decided to move to Mexico because I couldn't afford healthcare in the United States. So I moved to Mexico, and I started my own business down there and lived there for 3 years. It was sort of an inspirational, if I can make this business work, then so can you type of post.
It was great. I was reading it yesterday. It's a fantastic piece of writing. So we're really saying that if people bring their own personality, their own backstory into their business and into their blog, they can emulate that as well.
Yeah, and what I would recommend is whatever your topic is, and you can do this even for the most boring topics, okay? Tell your readers why you're interested in that topic or why you got started in that business. Tell them what motivated you to do it, assuming that it wasn't just money. If it's just money, then don't tell them that. But find a story about why you're in the business that you're in, or about a result that you created for a customer, or something that makes you feel emotion. Or you can even talk about your common enemy. So sometimes your customers will have a common enemy. I mean, example, if you're an accountant, for example, then the common enemy would be the government who's trying to take taxes from you, right? So writing something angry about the way government is treating its citizens, regardless of what country you're in, is probably a good way to bond with that audience, because they're going to feel the same way, most of them. So it can be any emotion, but try to find a common enemy. Try to find something in your past that maybe is close to the customers. Try to find a reason why that would make them like you a little bit more. But more than anything, yeah, don't be afraid to be yourself. I think people in this day and age are a little bit wary of buying from the faceless corporation. I think they would rather, even if you're a company, I think they would rather work with individuals. And they would rather work with somebody they know and trust. So rather than trying to hide behind a corporate name and, a big corporate website and having a corporate phone number and all of those things, I think it's better to be an individual and to let your individual voice shine through and let your customers fall in love with you as a person and trust you as a person. And if you do that, that has a compounding effect on the amount of sales that you have in your business.
You're listening to the Content Champion Podcast, showcasing the best content marketing strategies across the web.
We're back with Jon Morrow of boostblogtraffic.com. Small businesses listening to this really need to get a designated blogger or someone who is going to be the voice of their company to go online and commit to being that voice of their blog, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the big companies aren't doing this. So if you're in a small space and you're trying to compete against larger companies, being more human, being more in contact with your customers, being more willing to listen than your competition, that can create an enormous amount of brand loyalty. Just people feeling like they can have a conversation with you is enormous, because most big companies, if you deal with them, you feel like if there's a problem, they really don't care. They're not going to talk to you. But if you're a small company, having that interaction with your customers where they know they can get in touch with you, where they know that they can at least express how they feel about something, whether they love it or if they hate it, either one, having that dialogue is a fantastic way of making your customers trust you more than the competition, even if you're brand new. And a lot of people would rather work with somebody that they can get into contact if there's a problem or something they love than a company that's been around forever.
So let's move on to another area of this in which you excel, the promotion of the blog posts once they're published. And you're obviously a fan of guest blogging.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't heard of guest blogging, the best way I know to explain it is it's like being the opening act for a famous band. So imagine whoever your favorite band is. When they go on tour, they probably have an opening act band that's just starting out, that isn't as big as they are, that gets the crowd revved up and excited before they come out, right? Guest blogging is kind of like that, where a blogger has accumulated this huge audience, but they need someone else to do part of the show. And that's your opportunity, because they gathered this huge audience. that's there waiting for them, but they're giving you an opportunity to go out there first. And just as a lot of opening acts, if they do a really good job, then, before you know it, they have a record contract because everyone paid attention to them because they were the opening act for a famous band. Well, the same is true with blogging. If you go on a very large blog and you write a guest post and you kill it, then not only can you get a lot of new readers and subscribers from that, but also a lot of the other authorities in your space will kind of take notice of you. And it becomes a way to break in and form relationships with people who may have been totally inaccessible before.
And how would you recommend approaching some of the blogs within your sector to try and get guest blogging opportunities?
The big thing is to, number one, all the big blogs that accept guest posts now, almost all of them have guidelines on what they want. Okay, so read the guidelines. If you can't find them linked on the sites, do a Google search for whatever the blog is. So for my blog, it would be Boost Blog Traffic Guidelines. And you could read those. Pay attention to the format of the posts. How long are they? What kind of headlines do they use? Do they use a lot of personal stories? Do they not? Also, pay attention to the topics that are written about on the blog. Try to choose a topic that's already proven popular in the past, but talk about a different angle or go into greater detail than maybe a past post did. What a lot of guest bloggers do that's a mistake is they feel like they have to be totally original. So they choose a topic that's never been written about before, but usually there's a reason why those topics haven't been written about before, and you get rejected. It's better to choose something that's been covered a good bit, but you have this particular little piece that maybe hasn't been covered in great detail, and cover that. And don't try to promote your company or anything in the post itself, especially not in your very first post. When you write a guest post, at the bottom you get what's called a byline. And in the byline, you can write about who you are, what your company is. A lot of blogs will even let you make a little offer to give away a free ebook or a webinar or something. That's the opportunity to subtly promote your company. But in the post itself, it should be pure content that's extremely useful to the reader.
And should you engage with the owner of the blog that you want to guest on first on social media by perhaps sharing their stuff for a while and starting a dialogue with them to kind of get on their radar, as it were?
If you can, that's very helpful. Your chances of getting a guest post go up considerably if they at least recognize your name. It's not 100% necessary these days, though. If you can't get anyone to respond to you after you try, don't let that demoralize you. If the blog accepts a lot of guest posts, which blogs are becoming more and more like online magazines. Okay, so a lot of blogs now accept a lot of guest posts. And in that case, even if you can't get the editors to interact with you, it's perfectly okay to go ahead and send them a pitch, even if you've never had any interaction with them. If it's a good pitch, if it's a good idea for an article, they'll oftentimes still say yes, even if you don't know them. But if you can get to know them beforehand, it certainly helps.
And if we're bringing our A game to the stuff that we write for our own site, we should certainly bring it for the guest posts as well.
Oh, yeah. If you think about it this way, a lot of big blogs have over 100,000 subscribers. Okay. So you're in the UK, right? So, I mean, that's probably as large as the largest football stadium that you have there. So imagine that many people are reading your post. Okay. And when you write a guest post, you need to be worthy of that much attention. If you're not, then what you've written is not good enough. For me, what I typically do and what I recommend my students do is I said as a baseline, you should expect to work on your post for at least 10 hours. At least 10 hours. If it's not that, some people can write faster than that. Some people write slower than that. But I found for the majority of people, a lot of students who get rejected, you ask them, how long did you spend on your post? Oh, I worked on it for 45 minutes. And for 100 and something thousand people, you're going to work on something for 45 minutes. I usually say, work on it until it's the best thing you've ever written. For me, those two posts that we talked about, I spent probably more than 40 hours on each of those posts, writing those.
I'm just wondering about frequency, though, as well. A lot of people listening to this, they're thinking of time management. If I'm writing for my own blog, I'm writing for other people's blogs. What are we looking at doing? Maybe once a week on your own blog and then once or twice on a guest post slot on another blog in a month?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. So the rule these days is quality over quantity. So however often you can publish great content. For some of my students, they cut back to only one post a month, but they make that one post incredible to where everyone is talking about it. It's better to have one post a month that everyone is talking about because it's the best thing ever published on that topic than it is 20 mediocre posts that nobody cares about, nobody wants to talk about. So it's quality over quantity. And also, in terms of where you post, it depends on how big your own readership is. What I recommend is, in the beginning, before you're at, let's say, 1,000 subscribers to your blog, and that's 1,000 email subscribers preferably, I actually recommend spending 80% of your time writing for other people's blogs and only 20% of your time writing on your own blog.
Wow, okay.
And the reason why is, if you're spending time and you have 50 readers or 100 readers on your own blog, it's not going to do you a lot of good because there isn't a large enough audience there to share the content for you. So it's kind of like Winston Churchill, for example. Imagine if he had given his famous speeches to an empty room. It wouldn't have done anybody any good. The only reason why those speeches were so motivational and so powerful was because the world was listening. And it's the same thing in the beginning of your blog. You could write the best post in the history of the human race, but if you don't have anyone there to read it and to share it, then it's not going to do you any good. So that's why in the beginning, it's a good idea to spend the majority of your time finding other large audiences to get in front of. And then once you get a small audience gathered together, like let's say 1,000 subscribers, then you can back that off, maybe do 50-50, and then you can continue to back it off as your audience grows. But in the beginning, when your audience is small, definitely do everything you can to get in front of large groups of people, rather than wasting your best content when there's no one to read it.
And I guess the same applies to social media as a promotional tool. Certainly build up your profiles first, but don't sort of speak to an empty room with that either.
Exactly. My opinion of that is actually a little controversial. From what I've noticed from most popular bloggers that I know, they build the popular blog and then they build a following on social channels, not the other way around. So I've known very few bloggers, it does happen, but it's fairly rare that they'll build a large following on Twitter or a large following on Facebook or a large following on Google+, and then they use that as leverage to build a popular blog. Usually what happens is the blog itself becomes popular, and then people click through on the links to follow them on the different social channels. Rarely ever the other way around. So in my opinion, if you're strapped for time, as most entrepreneurs are, the best thing to do is, honestly, unless you feel like it's just crucial for your business, I wouldn't spend any time at all on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, any of it. Yeah, you might create an account, maybe put a little bit of information there about your company. But as far as actively trying to build those profiles, I think it's better if you want to build a blog, then build the blog, put all of your attention and energy into that, and then if you want to build those social channels later, you can. But to try to focus on multiple channels all at the same time, dividing your focus like that, most of us just don't have enough time in the day to be able to treat them all and work at them all like they should be treated. So I think it's better to just focus your time and energy on one at a time.
Well, talk about using your time wisely. I've been making really good use of your headline hacks document, which I downloaded from your site. Could you remind us where we can find you online, John, and also tell us about your course that you've got coming out?
So yeah, the best place to find me is at boostblogtraffic.com. And there you can get headline hacks, which is a sort of a cheat sheet to help you write blog posts that go viral. And if you're interested in guest blogging, you can head over to guestblogging.com. There's a free video series and a mind map of how to get traffic and everything there. If you enjoy all of that, we have a course that you can sign up for. But even the free content itself can be very helpful if you'd like to learn the basics.
Wait for it, listeners. Here comes the PS question.
Now, this is what I call the PS question. Could you please share, John, one advanced traffic generation strategy with my listeners, something that they could use right after this podcast?
So one very advanced strategy is what I call traffic targeting in relation to blogging. Okay. What a lot of bloggers do is they write a blog post and then they go looking for other people to link to it and to help them promote it. I think the best thing to do is to actually reverse that process and to pick a blog that you want to link to you before you write the post, and then to think about, okay, what could I write on my own blog that's relevant to my audience, but also irresistible for them to link to? And think about that, kind of watch the other blog, figure out what the most popular topics are, watch what they share on Twitter or Facebook or Google+, Pinterest, wherever. Try to figure out, okay, if I wrote about this on my own blog, it would be irresistible for them. Write it, then send them an email and say, hey, I wrote this. I know that you share a lot of articles on this topic. Would you mind taking a look at it and letting me know what you think? Thanks. And then just say your name. And usually if you do that, I'd say 30 to 50% of the time, if you targeted it correctly, you'll get the link you were looking for, and it'll send you a lot of traffic.
That's a great strategy. I'm going to try it myself. Look, John, thanks very much indeed for your time. I recommend everyone goes to boostblogtraffic.com because it's a fantastic site. I'm spending a lot of time there at the moment. It's definitely one of my favourite blogs. I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing the sum of your considerable knowledge on blogging and guest blogging.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So that's it for episode 20 of the Content Champion podcast. Thank you to the ever-inspiring Jon Morrow for an excellent interview. You can find this podcast on the Content Champion website, Stitcher Radio, the BlackBerry Network, and of course on iTunes. If you like what I'm doing, I'd love your comments and reviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time...
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's the Content Champion.